Perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Good evening and welcome to Second District PTA's 411 Wednesdays series, where we provide periodic PTA trainings and address issues and topics relevant to PTA advocacy and our school district. And so tonight's topic is staying on track with PTA financials. And we hope that all PTA leaders in San Francisco can benefit from this evening's presentation. We like to remind PTA leaders that fiscal and fiduciary responsibilities belong not just to PTA treasurers and financial officers, and rather to all of our PTA board members. So we're happy to have treasurers here and presidents and secretaries and all leaders, anyone that's interested. And I'll introduce myself. My name is Melissa Mountain, and I volunteer as the Second District or San Francisco PTA's president. And also here tonight, we have our district treasurer, Sheila Santos, and she could do her hand wave, so she'll come up to the top of your screen, and several other of our experienced district PTA board members to help answer questions tonight. A few of the housekeeping items, just please be aware that we're recording this meeting so that those who could not attend can benefit from the presentation and all of the answers to your questions. Please update your Zoom names if you're comfortable to include your pronouns and your associated PTA schools. Just helps us to get to know each other. And feel free to use the chat for questions. And one of our district PTA members can let me know or let Sheila know that there's questions to address, and we'll try to do that aloud for the recording. So those people that are watching it later won't miss out. And you can raise your Zoom hand if you'd just like to ask your question aloud too. And we will be sharing all of this information provided this evening with all of those who registered, and then more widely through our newsletter. And so, and our recording will be on our YouTube channel, and we'll tell you more about how to access that in a bit. And you will get these exact slides with all the notes on the bottom. So lots of information to jump into. I was just going to say, I've been involved with PTA for, 12 or so years now. And some of this still feels a little bit overwhelming. And even as a district PTA board member for maybe 4 or 5 years now, some of this, especially when you get to, for me, it's like the tax forms that always just seems a little overwhelming. So you're not alone if you're feeling like that. And so tonight we just hope to really focus and break it down for you to make it not so daunting, and just to let you know that that's what we're here for. That's what is great about being part of PTA, as opposed to some of the other the independent parent associations, because we are here to support you at the district level, and California PTA is also here to support you. There's a lot of resources. So we'll get started and can move to the next slide. Just a quick review of our agenda. I want to show you this document, which of course you'll get access to. So it's going to be planning out the PTA year. That's not going to be something that we're going to cover in depth, because we're going to really just stick to the financial parts, but it's an excellent overall guidance. We will be focusing more so on the requirements and deadlines to remain in, you'll hear people, California PTA often say, remain in good standing. So we're going to tell you exactly what you need to do to do that. And a lot of these things are not just for PTA, it's really for any nonprofit. It could be for any type of independent parent association as well. But again, we're here to support you. We will dive a little bit deeper into the tax filing support, because that I know can be daunting for people. And then we've got some resources to share, and we definitely want to answer your questions. Some were submitted in advance, and we'll get to those. Those were things like, can you use Venmo? Someone was asking about how to do electronic payments, and what forms you need to do. So those submitted questions we will definitely get to as well. Okay, so that's a quick overview of our agenda. And let's see. I'm going to the next slide. Which one are you on? Between, okay. Yeah, thank you. So these are the three main things that, I say ideally completed, but don't be stressed if you haven't done that's especially number 3, because we're going to help you get to that tonight. A lot of these things you've probably been hearing from us. So number 1, you need to submit who's on your board and their contact information, and that's done through My PTEZ. It's an online system called that. We really encourage the PTAs to update that information themselves. But if you're having trouble, we are here to help and can even get that done, for you if you're really struggling. Maybe even Sheila can just click on the My PTEZ and just show you a little bit of what it looks like, because we don't want to just talk about it, we want to show it to you.
So I will do a quick login. It has my user information here. And this is what my PTEZ looks like. And you'll see up here, if you have the paid version, which we do as Second District, you have this checks and receipts and ledgers. It's actually an accounting software. But even if you don't have the paid version, there is an administration. Oh, sorry, I just need to make sure move this out of my way. So there is an administration tab here where you can actually see, for instance, the officer board member contacts. We'll talk about this more later, but basically there's a few things to navigate through here under admin. So this is our Second District board. There's Melissa, there's myself, and a few others. Claire is here, Michelle. And it has our contact and information, and this is where you can see this little person here is where you click on to like I can click on myself, for instance, to add my create a login. This is my email, and you can enter a password, and you have a position here, and this position will show you what access you'll have. So I don't want to go too in depth. I think we can continue later on in the presentation. So let me just go back. For specific, we'll go back to my PTEZ with more specific things, but let's go back to the screen.
Yeah, I think that's great, just to show people what it looks like inside, and that's the main section that you would use with the free version, as Sheila said. My PTEZ is used to help District PTA as well as California PTA keep in contact with you, but there's also a paid version which can help you as an accounting software. So
let's go back to the slideshow. Sorry, there we go.
Okay.
Before you move on, there was a question in the chat about how much it costs monthly. Cindy was having a hard time finding that.
We have, I don't have off the top of my head, but I know that Sheila has a slide that we have our previous treasurers training, and that is linked at the bottom of this slide deck that everyone will get, and it has the cost breakout. But what's the approximate? Do you remember, Sheila?
Yeah, it's approximately, so it depends on how much your earnings are. It's a little bit like your taxes. So if you, I believe if you're earning under $50,000, or if your revenue is expected to be under $50,000, it's some scale. It's about $100, I believe, annually. Maybe a little bit less. Maybe it's $75. I'm just rough numbers. Let's say it's about $70, $80 if you earn under $50,000. Maybe $120 if you earn more than $50,000. So it's a scale.
I recall that similarly as well too. And again, we have a link. I know Sheila had a great slide about that and laid out all the costs. And it's also, if you go to my PTEZ, the login page, there is it's all laid out on there as well. But I know it can be difficult to find, so it is in our deck at the end. So number one, and most people have already done it, or if not, we've already been in contact with you, and we're gathering that information, or we know why you maybe don't have a president yet. But we're almost at 100% of that. So great job. We're on track with that. The next thing that you're going to hear a lot about is the membership dues. And so in order to be a PTA, again, in good standing, we need to have a minimum of 15 members. And that deadline that you'll be hearing from us in California PTA is November 15th. And then I say, and then monthly. And that's because it's just a reminder that if you are to collect more members throughout the year, say you collect more in December, we want you to submit those in December rather than wait, a couple of months. So each month, if you collect more members, you can go ahead and submit the amounts for that. Now, some of you may be saying, I don't submit the manual anymore because you use what we call Totem. So what is Totem? Totem is the PTA's online membership sign-up system. And it does cost $1 on top of your dues. So for example, if your bylaws state that your dues are $10 per member, then it would charge through Totem $11 to that person's credit card. Believe me, I was someone who was not much into extra fees, but this $1 fee is well worth it. You can explain it to your community that it really helps with volunteer time. this goes ahead and forwards on that portion of your dues, which is $4.75. That needs to go for each member that passes on through, they call it through channel. So a portion goes to support district PTA, a portion to the state, and a portion to national. And so that second part that you're doing after you've submitted you have your leaders and your board and you've submitted them, you're going to gain members. And so you've started a membership campaign hopefully already, and just make sure that if you have been collecting members manually, that you turn those in the minimum 15 members by November 15th. And if you are doing it only manually, you would use the unit remit form. I wonder if Sheila can click on that one. This is for if people are turning in checks, if they're filling out paper forms, or even if you've created your own sort of digital Google form, you would still need to submit and forward that $4.75 per person. Some of you that have been involved with PTA for a while might notice that this looks different because it used to have, you used to use this remittance form for both membership as well as insurance payments. And now insurance is something different that we're going to talk about. So this is the form that you would use monthly to turn in your membership. Anything else to add to the new form, Sheila? Or Claire?
No, you would just just a quick, you would add your youth school name here, the unit. We talked about units, they're the different, like we're the second district and all the units are the different schools. So you would put your school name here, your address. The council is not important here. And then you would just basically each month, especially this first month before November 15th, you put in, let's say you have 20 new members, it would be 20 times 475, and you would put that amount here. You have your check, put your information here, and then this is the mailing address that you can mail it to, and that's it. And then Claire, who helps me with the financial, she's my financial secretary. She'll pick up those checks, and we enter them, and we actually, so out of this 475, us as second district, we only keep 50 cents. $4.25 we send to CAPTA. And this is the manual process. With Totem, what's interesting and nice about Totem is Totem does that all automatically. Totem you will receive your electronic payments, and we will receive in the bank the 50 cents for each of your members, and CAPTA receives the $4.25 for each of their members. So this is just the manual. This is the manual way of doing it. And we're happy for both of those. Just
can I add, it's also helpful to have an email address on there for the treasurer so that I can send you the receipt that confirms we got it.
Oh, that's good to know. Thank you. So if we head back to the slideshow, and I know that you may have more specific questions about Totem, which we could do a whole 411 on that, and California PTA often does trainings on it. I just want to show you that if you do click on that FAQ, we don't need to do it now, but there's a lot of the questions that you may have are answered in there. So again, we will be sharing this information with everyone. Let's see. And so then the other thing that you ideally would have completed by now is sharing those documents that should be done. And so you would do an annual financial report. That's the report for the full report of last fiscal year, last school year. And the next thing would be to do the year-end audit. And we'll talk more about audits in a bit, but these reports are things that we want you to share with us. And the easiest way to do that is to upload that into My PTEZ. So if you are not able to access My PTEZ, that's when you reach out to us and we will give you a login and password so that you can do your updates. If there's someone that's like really struggling with the tech of this, you can email it to the treasurer, and that email address is also in the notes. And so we can get that information from you. But we really do want you to share the annual financial report from last year, the year-end audit that would have been approved at your first PTA meeting, and then also your annual budget for the current year, which would also be something that you would have approved at your first PTA meeting. Are there any questions in the chat that we should address that are on these three topics before we move on? Otherwise, we can just go on to the next slide. So those are three things that probably you've all done, number 1 and 2 for the most part. And 3 is kind of just a reminder at this point that we do want you to share those items. Okay.
Quick question. Oh, sorry, going back to Totem really quick. So is it always automatically dispersed in terms of the split? And the reason I ask is, so we use QuickBooks at Jefferson, and I've been seeing like how much we've been getting in the membership. So I had assumed like I take that amount and then I figure out how to send, the share to Second District and then California. And you're saying that should have been automatically taken care of.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So let's say you've set your membership at $10, for example. I think what you will see when you in your bank account, I believe you get a monthly. I believe you get a monthly deposit, and if you count them up, it will be $10. You wouldn't receive the full $10. I believe $1 goes to Totem, $4.25 will go to CAPTA, 50 cents will go to us, and you'll get the rest of that for each member.
Okay.
To clarify with the $1, the $1 goes straight to Totem. So if your if your membership was 10, it would be charged 11 to the member.
Okay.
And then,
I'm sorry,
the 10 minus 475 would be in your account.
Okay.
Now that's only if the member signs up themselves through Totem. We've talked a lot about this on our officer listserv, but for others, if people are signing up outside of Totem, you're welcome to add them manually. In that case, things wouldn't forward, funds wouldn't forward. But you're able to keep them if you like the idea of having one list and you like to re-enter manual people into Totem, you can do that. Okay, so we'll go on to the next slide. The next slide is just things that is kind of the next steps after that. So things that you are probably on your to-do list now, if maybe they're not already done. And so not everyone has a raffle, but if you're even thinking about having a raffle, we recommend that you go ahead and turn in that raffle registration form right after September 1st. It's an annual form, so you don't want to do it before September 1st because then it would be for the previous year. So just go ahead and turn it in. You can just make up a date if you think it's going to be approximately at a certain time, and go ahead and turn that in. It has been updated to $30. Some people may remember it was, I think, $25 before. And this is also something that we're not going to really dive too much into raffles, but we have a ton of information linked in the slides in the notes section. Let's see. And so then another thing you want to make sure that you've done is to identify your auditor. Your bylaws will state if that's an elected position, so you may already have that elected officer, or if it's an appointed position. And so if you haven't appointed anyone yet, you want to make sure that you have someone so that they can do that partial year audit, usually in January. You wanted to do that. The other thing that is good to start doing in September and October is preparing to file your taxes, which for most PTAs will be due on November 15th. And that's because for most PTAs, the fiscal year is from July 1st through June 30th, and taxes are due 4.5 months after, which puts us at the upcoming deadline of November 15th. I'm going to let Sheila talk more about taxes on the next slide that we get to, but based on how much money your PTA brings in, you'll file one of these forms with the IRS, one of these 990 versions, and you'll file another with California, one of these 199 versions. And then the fourth thing that should be working on right now and after you file your taxes is one more form for the AG. So you'll hear that a lot. The Attorney General of California is a charitable trust registration renewal form. And again, that we have tons of links about that in the slideshow, and even like an annotated one that was an example of how to fill out the form. So we can go on to the next slide. Just kind of wraps up these 4 main steps. And I feel like, we want to just help you to make sure that you do these necessary must-do things so that you guys can all focus on your communities and building community and advocating. And so that's why we're here to help you with these sorts of things. Sheila, do you want to speak more to the federal taxes and state tax?
Yes. So November 15th, the deadline is coming up. but basically there are three different types of taxes. They're all 990s. They're all called 990s, and the distinguishing feature is that if you if your gross revenue is less than $50,000, there's a very simple form called the 990N, or sometimes it's called the postcard form. It's all just electronic now. There's no paper, there's no mail-in version of this form. You submit it. It's very simple. If you have your basically step one, the first thing, having a financial report basically gives you all the everything that you've spent and how much you have taken in through the whole year. Given that information plus your tax ID and plus your president's address, you can fill in the 990 form within about 10 minutes. It's a very simple form. The 990 EZ is if you earn 50,000 to, I believe it's 200,000. I need to check if it's 200,000 or 250,000. But essentially, if you earn that, if your revenues are within that range, it is a little bit more complicated. We do recommend you hiring a professional accountant, or I've filled them out myself, and I know some of you do. So it is possible, but it is a little bit more detailed, and you'll need to have certain information from your annual financial report, like how much money is allocated for different things, like your membership and how many donations. It's more like the form is more. The accounting is just more categorized. And if you earn more than that, you have to fill in the 990, which is the full form, and you definitely should hire an accountant to fill that form out. Yes, and then step three, I'll just continue. So that's the big one. That's the one you should do first. And then the state level ones are once you finish your 990, you can fill out the two state level ones. So the first one, or step three here, is the state taxes with the Franchise Tax Board, and it's the 199 or the 199N. Again, depending on whether or not you, depending on how much you pay. It's fairly straightforward as well. You can do each of these electronically or mail in as well. The charitable, the fourth one, or the next one is also a state level one, but it's through the Attorney General. It's called the RRF1, and oops, can go forward, backwards. Stay here. Okay, so yeah, so the RRF1, I can give you a quick example if you want, but there essentially we have the RRF1, and there is one more form, the CTTR1. If you did fill in a 990N, the postcard version, because it was so simplistic, the CTTR1 has a little bit more details about where that money, about the money. So you do need a little bit more information for the CTTR1 form.
Yeah, I feel like you get a little bit punished with that last one. You're kind of ahead of the game. You're getting an easy out because you're making less money, but then they make you do one more form if you're under 50,000. I think we had some questions in the chat. Is it electronically through the IRS website, or where do you submit these tax forms?
Right. So the IRS one, I believe, Melissa, you probably have links in this document. If not, I'll put them in. But basically, with the IRS, the 990N is you can pay electronically through their website. You actually have to create an account. You can create an account, and if you're actually a treasurer for multiple organizations, you just have the one account, and you can file 990Ns easily for several different organizations, and you can see the copies or the CV issues there. I think for the 990 EZ, I believe you can file it online, but I think you need to go through like a third-party organization, and there's some free 990 EZ websites. We'll link to those. But all of these
you actually have to you're actually filing them with the IRS or the state, not with PTA. Although we like to have a copy, the actual filing is done to the government organization.
Yes, it's all going to the IRS. So the 990s are the IRS. The organization for the the organization for the 199N is the California Franchise Tax Board and the Attorney General. And all of these are essentially to basically show that you are a charitable organization and show where your income is coming from, essentially.
And have we recommended, the other question in the chat is, do we have Second District recommended accountants to use?
That's a good question. I don't know. Honestly, I don't have any off the top of my head. I don't know if we recommend.
Yeah, we've made some suggestions for possibly sharing. I mean, for people, so there are some people involved with PTA that aren't necessarily a accountant, but they're very good at this. And so you can trade between PTAs, and that's something you could use on our officer listserv, put that out on the treasurer's listserv, for example, and say, hey, do you want to switch? I'll do your taxes if, for audits, I'll do yours if you do mine. But we don't have like any long list of accountants to do the actual taxes. I started talking about audits and taxes. I was confusing two things, but
yeah, I do actually think for audits, it is a simpler task. I don't think, or simpler, it can be a simpler task. I don't think you need a financial or accounting, specialty.
I agree. Let's see. So we'll move on to the next slide. We wanted to mention some of the other upcoming big deadlines. So we already talked about that you'll be hearing a lot from us to make sure that you submit your minimum of 15 members. California PTA has a goal of 1 million members this year. I think they had somewhere just over 500,000. And so their goal is if everyone brought in one more member, they could reach their million. So if you're interested in more membership campaign and information like that, the California PTA is often putting out Zoom hours like this where people are sharing ideas for various types of membership campaigns. There's a lot of membership material and support out there for you as well. We wanted to, for sure, if you haven't heard already, mention that the insurance procedure is very different this year. You used to use, remember, that remittance form that you also send in membership amounts on and send that insurance money to us at Second District PTA. No longer. You're now, it's more streamlined. And so you're sending your insurance premium directly to the insurance company, which is called AIM. I don't remember what the acronym is at the moment. That deadline is now a little bit farther out than last year when you had to send it to us and then we had to send it off to the insurance company. So you do have until December 20th, but we highly recommend that you just get that done as soon as possible because there will be no exceptions at all. If they don't get it by December 20th in their hand, they will assess that $25 late fee. And we don't want to have that happen. So if you're mailing the check, you want to do that in advance because if they haven't received it by then, they will charge that fee. It is a little bit higher at $272 per unit this year, but that is actually a very good rate. They did not raise the rates last year, and it's a lot less than an independent organization would have. The other things that you'll hear about but aren't as immediate on our plates are the mid-year audits that you'll start in January. And then also some of you have been asking about workers' compensation forms. Those aren't even available yet. They'll become available in December. The main point here is that everyone does need to fill out the form. So some people get confused and think if I wasn't paying any employees, then I don't need to fill it out. You simply still turn it in and just write right across it, no one paid, or something to that effect. And I think that's also going to be an online version actually, and that's due January 31st. But these are the types of things you'll be hearing from us several times about these deadlines. Were there any questions in the chat that we should address so that everyone can hear them? I don't think so.
I did see actually one question regarding having to vote for. Cindy, I believe you asked about having to vote for the members for the insurance. Was that your question? If it was, it is a good idea, good practice to have this value as in your budget.
Yes, it was. Okay.
Yeah, so actually, explicitly put that in your budget, $272
We
for.
have to. We're going to approve our budget in our next meeting because we're just so all brand new that we just we're like just explaining to what the PTA does, and then we haven't done the budget yet. But we will do the budget, and I'll add that line item to it. I think it's already on there, the old budget. We sort of did a like, okay, this is the old budget, and we're pretty much going to have the same budget, but we'll vote on it next month.
Yep, and that's a great practice. That's like having your all PTAs will have a budget committee, and that's technically chaired by the treasurer. And that would be the process. It's the easiest way is kind of look at how you did it last year and review line by line. Does anything need an update? So you'll be right on track soon.
That's good to know.
Okay. And reach
There's
out if you
also
have
a
any
question.
questions. Okay.
There's a question from May Dang from Sunset ES Elementary School. So it's regarding workers' comp for program consultants. Are they considered employees for workers' comp? I believe workers' comp is if you as a PTA are paying anyone, and also if you're not paying anyone, you still need to fill out the form to say you are not paying anyone.
I will say that because, we're not all experts in everything, but who is the expert is that AIM insurance company. And I have always had good experience even calling their phone number or emailing their main phone number. And again, we have that information in the slides to how to contact them. They are very good about answering the questions about liability insurance. And do they answer the workers' comp questions as well? If not, I often will refer if it's not something that Sheila or Terry or Claire, our financial experts on district board, we have a great treasurer at California PTA who also answers her emails very well and can get back to you.
Okay.
Okay.
Should we move on next?
Sure. As I mentioned, Sheila gave some great, I think there's probably recordings of one of those at least. I'm not sure about the September one, but so there's probably videos on our YouTube channel, but these are links to the slides, which have a lot more detail in them as well. So you can follow along with the slides or watch the videos of the previous treasurer trainings that go into more detail about process. This link here goes to California PTA tax filing support. It's California PTA's page that really lays out the tax filings information really well. I would say that you will hear a lot from us through our almost weekly newsletter. And also you are welcome to use the officer listservs. We have one for presidents, one for treasurers, one for arts education. I think the only one that we don't have is for secretaries. There's not a dedicated one for secretaries. But if a secretary wanted to get on, say, the president's listserv or the treasurer's listserv, just ask us and we're happy to put anyone on those. And so definitely follow us on Instagram or Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. We have all of those where we push out information. And then for the Q&A, these were some of the pre-submitted questions that we wanted to address. Can PTAs have credit cards or debit cards? The answer is actually no. Sometimes your bank will just give them to you automatically. We ask that you cut them up and shred them up because we can't use credit cards and debit cards. It's a lot to do with the safety of the accounts, and because it's a membership organization, we want to have as much transparency as possible. And so there's certain forms that Sheila can show you there that kind of goes with the other question that someone had. Well, how do you do electronic payments? Sheila, do you want to go over that? Because I know a lot of people don't realize those electronic payments take 2 forms.
Yeah. So this is a standard one. You'll see that this is you might have something similar for just anyone filing a reimbursement request for the PTA, but you still do need to fill this out. This is essentially listing, let's say you as a treasurer, for instance, would be putting your treasurer and your information here, and then what the expenditure was for, and the list. And yeah, and this needs to be signed, dated and signed. It needs to be signed by the president and the secretary. So you as a treasurer would be signing to ask for like the release of these funds, and the president and the secretary would actually sign to approve the release of those funds. And then I believe the other form is the actual is this is something hopefully you're familiar with, but the other form is where do I go? Where do I get back? I have a weird time trying to get back to my presentation. What's the presentation? I'm sorry, I apologize here. Where is it? Oh, here. Okay, there we are. And then the electronic authorization form. So this is slightly different. It looks similar, but it is actually different. So this is the form where you authorization form for EFT. Yeah. So you put the date, and let's say you're paying for the AIM insurance, like AIM insurance accepts electronic payments. You would be putting the date, and the vendor would be AIM. And then you would actually put the budget, sorry, the reason for the payment amount, payment account. So here you would actually be putting things like your bank account, your bank account number, I believe, and then the actual payment amount requested by you as the treasurer. And this is sort of equivalent to the double signed check. So you could think of this EFT authorization as a form that doubles as your check sign for your check signer. So here it would be the treasurer and the president or whoever your check signers are with the date, and that's it. And then this is information for when you approve checks. For instance, you will be like showing this to in your board and general meetings as an approved check, essentially. So you would fill out those two forms, and then you could go ahead and do the payment. I believe, like for instance, I think the account information that's needed for AIM, you would be giving your actual like routing numbers, your bank account and routing numbers to AIM. And yeah, does that, any questions there?
I have a quick question just about the format. I mean, because this is based on when everything was done with paper. And I mean, actually, over the pandemic, I'm sure people were doing a lot of stuff via email. And I don't know who has fax machines at home. And so I know, I mean, I'm not acting as a treasurer for any PTA right now, but I know like when I was at Soda, we had converted some of these forms to Google type forms, but I don't know how that works with signatures and if you have to have a paper copy. I'm sure other people have those type of questions too.
Yeah, I think those are good questions. Even something as simple as a cell phone picture can work. And just sending the picture. Another tip is there's a free app out there that can change photos into PDF. So those are sometimes easier to email. What is the program that we like, Sheila?
Apple has the scan thing,
Yeah.
and you can just in the notes, you can just like scan the document, and in notes you just like go to like you're taking a picture and it scans the document and turns it into a PDF. Super easy on the iPhones.
Oh, yeah,
Great.
and I know also that I'm on an Apple and or on a Mac, and Preview has some annotation features, for instance, where you could actually in the PDF viewer you can type and add things. So I typically just take these regular PDFs and I start entering my any text, and there's several free apps to do that. Like in my case, it just comes with the Mac computer, the preview version, so I can enter text. And then Melissa was just talking about something that Melissa and I use, and this is a free account called DocHub. And you can see I actually have a few things here. This is my authorization and insurance form. Is this the AIM insurance? Yes. So here it is. Here's what we've done here. So this is us paying our insurance. Our insurance is $188 because we're a little different as a district. We have less, I guess, liability, or it's covered through CAPTA. But essentially here I have AIM insurance, Association Insurance, and their information. The expense is $180. And this form, this is really fantastic because I can actually add my signature. So I've uploaded my signature, just a picture of my signature, and I won't add it here, but this one is already dated and signed. I dated it on the 4th of October. So, this is a simple thing, and then I can download it. It's a PDF, and then I send this version to Melissa. She also signs it. The same thing. It's an email chain, and whether you can use like a free, web service like this, or even if you can print it and sign it and just take a picture of it and send it back and forth, but you can get all the signatures just this way.
Cindy
and
is
then
asking.
when all the signatures are collected, what I do is then I save it and I upload it to our Google Drive or our doc. So I have the record. This is basically a receipt of. I keep this and the receipt in a digital folder. So everything is digital. There's no paper involved. And you can store and save that. I did verify with CAPTA recently that you can keep everything digitally on a Google Drive or some electronic folder, as long as all the board members have access to it, and future board members have access to it. I'll stop sharing this. But this is a great site. We'll put a link, I think, to DocHub. I really like DocHub.
And so people do need to fill out that authorization form, even though they're sending it to AIM Insurance for PTA. Do you agree with that, Sheila?
Get back to their presentation. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I
don't think you are.
I keep losing it.
You would agree that you'd still fill out that those two forms, the authorization form that you're making an electronic payment, even though you're doing it to our own, related organization, AIM Insurance.
That's right. Yeah. So I'd fill out those two forms. I collect the signatures from the treasurer and from Melissa, the president, and the secretary or secretary Jessica, and I get those forms. And once I have those signed, then I can actually make the electronic payment. And the electronic payment is a simple, usually like they'll give you a link that you can go to. QuickBooks does this too. There's a link and you put in your bank account information and it comes directly out of your bank account, but you should get those forms signed before you actually do that.
I think the questions were different. It was if they sent the insurance payment and form to Second District PTA, do they still have to fill those out?
Right, but we're not taking insurance anymore. We will have to return it. No. So you can't send insurance to Second District PTA any longer. That's how it was up until this year. So just starting the beginning of October for this school year, all insurance payments go directly to AIM Insurance. Now you can do that still manually. You can do it with the electronic payment, in which case you'd still, like every electronic payment, do the two forms, make the electronic payment. But you can also send in a check directly to AIM. And then when you're sending a check directly to AIM, it's just the one authorization form. You don't need the electronic form. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I did actually send it to AIM.
Okay.
I did send it to AIM. I didn't mean you. I meant AIM, but I just didn't know if I needed to fill out the actual form because I used a check. So I do have to fill out the form, is what you're saying, for that check.
With every expenditure, whether it's a check or electronic, you do the authorization form. Only if it's electronic do you do the second form. And the reason for that is,
but it's not reimbursed. Like we used our check, so no one's getting reimbursed. That's why I was confused, I guess.
Yeah,
I thought those were reimbursement forms.
It's a reimbursement slash also used for authorizations. And it's just that
Okay, got
extra
it.
layer of transparency for the membership, and it's checked off when you do audits. So if if your PTA didn't really realize that or wasn't doing it every time, that's, for example, something you would catch in an audit. And then it's just a recommendation, let's help add more transparency for our members, recommend that we are reminded always to do the forms. So let's see if there's any other questions in the chat. Did we miss anything?
I do have another question. Sorry.
Yeah.
We didn't know that the secretary was not supposed to be the third signer. So she signed a check. Is that going to be okay? Because she already is on the thing. Is that okay? Like, we got to check signs. Do I have to fix that check? I haven't cashed it yet because I was just waiting to fill out the form before I cashed the check. But because the three people were the president, the treasurer, and the secretary that went to the bank and got, on the signing form. But then they wrote the checks to me because I paid for something. So I wasn't sure. Now, do I have to rip up that check and rewrite it with somebody else's signatures?
Right. I totally
Because
understand.
I feel weird to have like me sign a check that's going to me, but
yeah, I do that with my business sometimes. I just don't, it doesn't feel right. Like I wanted it to be, an arm's length, for example. So I get why you were thinking that. But that is something that's good to point out, that secretaries are not signers. And so, from the bank's point of view, they're going to cash it because that's more of a PTA rule. School districts also have certain rules about, I don't believe teachers can be check signers for PTAs. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong about that. And that's just can be specific to various school districts. But so if you haven't sent it already, best practice would be to just have yourself, even though I know it feels funny, to sign that in the treasurer, and then to get the secretary off the bank account. And either substitute that with someone else that's on your board that could be a check signer, or just leave it with the two. But it would go through had you already sent it, and it would just be something, again, you would catch on an audit and then make that recommendation. Let's stick with best practices for transparency.
Okay, cool. Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
I believe the rationale there. So that's actually why the secretary is on the payment authorization form. It is somebody who is not a financial signer, kind of giving their signature of approval that this
Makes sense.
Great.
So a little more about that. So when there's a reimbursement for the president, I saw on the form the president has to sign the form. Does somebody else sign instead of the president, or is it just okay for me to sign besides the secretary, because I know she signs that?
We can clarify with Captain, but I think it is okay. Melissa, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think it's okay. Even though it's for the reimbursement's going to yourself, it's okay to sign either the check or the, and if you have more than other signers that are valid for that, then that's fine. Go ahead and, try to do that. But I don't believe there's a rule that you can't sign it for yourself. But I totally understand the thinking behind that.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see. So we talked about credit cards and debit cards, and using the two forms for every electronic expenditure. Some people were asking about Venmo, and there was a recent sort of blog put out by California PTA that explained it really well. We have a link for that in our slides. But Venmo and those types of platforms are called P2P. I didn't know that. They're called peer-to-peer payments, and those are not permissible. And it's actually right there on Venmo's website. It says Venmo's peer-to-peer experience cannot be used to solicit or collect charitable contributions. So we're not allowed to use Venmo to send to, because really it only goes to another person, and that's just, it needs to go directly to the account. Now you can have a PayPal account and use that just like a bank account, and you will treat that PayPal account that belongs to the organization, to your PTA, and that will be part of your audit. Just like you audit a checking account, you would also audit your PayPal account.
Can I ask a question about, oh, sorry, was someone else? I couldn't figure out how to raise my hand. Oh, here we go. No, wait, sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. It was like so many
No
buttons
worries.
after like, 2.5 years on BC. Okay, so on Venmo, this is really good to know. So for Jefferson, we have a Jefferson Elementary Venmo account. So it's not person to person. It's very clear that it's from person to PTA. Is that allowed?
Well, for what Venmo's own rule is that they do not want to be used for collecting charitable contributions or
Melissa,
soliciting for them. Yeah.
Melissa, they actually just changed their systems and they have a new charity feature. But I actually just called and I spoke to a representative there, and the setup is a little weird because in order to link your Venmo account, it has to be synced with your PayPal, and it has to be the Venmo account. The person who sets up the Venmo account has to set it up through their personal one. It will still be the charity Venmo account, but the original setup has to be it's really complicated. I probably would not recommend it. I was looking at it for another nonprofit organization, but the setup seems really a little complicated, because if the person who originally sets it up then leaves the organization, then you have to recreate the connection to the charity account, if that makes sense. It sounded really complicated to me. But they actually do have a charity feature so you can accept donations and stuff. And Venmo is actually under PayPal. PayPal is now the parent company of Venmo. So if that helps clarify a little bit too.
Yeah, I imagine I can see why Venmo would like to start doing that if it's something that they actually didn't do before and now are trying to. That makes a lot of sense. I still wonder if it might be an additional PTA rule, that California PTA is not wanting, just because of all that it's a little bit messy right now. And things do change, it can be kind of a slow organization to change, but these are, issues we can bring up with our state organization, and you can advocate through, district PTA, and we can bring these, issues up. I share these types of things all the time with California PTA. But for right now, they just put out that blog that was in the link on October 3rd of this year. So I know that they're not wanting us to use these types of platforms right now. Are there any other questions? We're just getting to the hour. So if there are any...
Yes, I just was wondering what people are doing then to collect donations, because now people don't carry cash. And I was wondering what other things are people using. So I'm guessing it's just PayPal, or is there any other option?
Some people have ways to accept credit cards as well through like Square is one of those. And then there's another one that I'm blanking on that's like that, where they can accept credit cards that go directly to your bank account. Totem does have a donation option. They do take a pretty high percentage, higher, I think it's 5%, which is higher than some of the other nonprofit rates that you can get through PayPal. And it's just, Totem has had some just not some kind of cons, more cons than pros with the donation part. So I don't really recommend it for the donation part. Highly recommend it for the membership part. And it's just hard to track them through Totem. And then probably some other people have some good ideas. Let's see, PayPal Giving Fund is recommended by Suze in the chat. No fees. And actually Facebook Giving is also no fees, she says. I'm not familiar with those, but there are ways to just accept direct credit cards for fundraising. There's even ways to accept stock donations.
Yeah, and I believe you could use also electronic, like Zella is also like an electronic transfer through your bank account. I believe that is also acceptable. It's essentially like a check or.
But I think Zelle works through a cell phone number, so it would have to be to a. Unless
It also is
your
an
PTA
email
has a cell
address. So
phone
like,
number.
Yeah,
I believe
email
it's through
address.
email address. So like if you have, like if let's say you have a Wells Fargo or a bank account for your account, I believe you can set that up. Or I'm with another charitable organization that does accept that. So maybe I should double check with CAPTA. But
I changed our on Bank of America where we have our PTA account. I changed it to our Wallenberg PTSA email, not my personal one. That way it's just
yes,
always, and then I think you could just
should be.
sell to that specifically because
that's
it'll go right to, it
good
should
to
go
know.
right to that. Yeah.
I'll
Yeah,
look
but
into it.
as
Thank you.
I
treasurers,
haven't
you should
used
be
it.
just,
I haven't used it. Yeah.
yeah. But as
But I'm
treasurers,
just
you should
saying.
be just, cognizant of these like transfers. Once a month, you should be looking at your bank account and reconciling that with your accounting software, and just to make sure that you account for that, so those transactions and categorize them properly as donations.
May,
Thank
did
you.
you have another question? I see your hand is up.
Oh yeah, I just had a so at Sunset we use the PayPal Giving Fund. That's been working out really well for us. We also use Shopify to sell our merchandise, and that's worked for us as well. I guess I had a question because we're hosting our Halloween event at the end of the month, which we're really excited about. But we're trying to figure out how to collect money, and so of course in the past it was just through cash because it was just something that was less than $10 for like a pizza dinner. But obviously people aren't doing that anymore. They're asking about Apple Pay, they're asking about all of these different ways. And so I guess I had a question. What we're trying to do is we're just going to use the PayPal Giving Fund and have folks pay through that so that we can still get 100% of we're charging $8 for like pizza and Halloween treat, things like that. And then, but people are still asking about the Venmo option and things like that. But if anybody has any experience in terms of hosting a small fundraiser like that, how they were able to receive like prepayment electronically and to be able to track all of that. I'm just going to try to use the PayPal Giving Fund and have people use the QR code with that, and they can even pay while they're in line. But yeah, if anybody has experience, I'd like to hear from that. Anyone?
So I have just one suggestion because we had to do this at an event for soda recently, and it's not through PTA, it's through the other nonprofit that I am with, and I actually personally accepted payments for some stuff, and then I wrote a donation to the school basically because it was the only way to. A lot of the kids were wanting to use Apple Cash and Venmo, or I forget what the other one was. And so, yeah, it does get complicated because people don't carry cash anymore. And, even if you have the readers to do the Apple Pay or whatever, it's hard. But I think Apple Pay is another way, and it's through, if you can accept it if you have the Square app, if you have the Square Up app, if you have a certain type of reader. And a lot of PTAs actually do have that because they have stores set up through Square Up, not to be confused with Squarespace, which is the website software. Anyway, I don't know if that makes sense, but that's one suggestion.
Yeah, people aren't carrying the cash, and then if they're not carrying a credit card too, then the Square swipe isn't working. I don't know. I would think that like Square would be doing the phone wave over Apple Pay, Android Pay soon, but I'm not sure if they have that technology yet. I can't recommend that we use a person or individual as the bank and pass it through to the PTA. That would not be recommended. I understand that that has happened in the past, but we can't recommend that. Any other ideas, people? I love the idea sharing.
I know
We had
PayPal does have I'm sorry, just one quick. PayPal does have a Bluetooth reader, so you can do the electronic, like the Apple Pay, Google Cash, but it is going through PayPal. It is still going through your PayPal account.
Square has this new QR code thing. I try to set it up on the fly at a meeting, and you have to like assign a QR code to each freaking thing that you are selling. So like a sweatshirt, and a t-shirt has to have its own QR code. It sounded like, and I was just like, I gave up in the middle of the thing. I'm like, sorry guys, we're not selling it right now unless you have a check. It was so painful. I was on customer support. They weren't understanding what I was saying. It was really annoying.
Yeah, it might take some advanced planning, even with the Square setup and the traditional old school now credit cards.
We
it does
couldn't
take a
find our
little
readers.
time.
So
Yeah. And so we're just getting to 8:36. If there's any final questions or suggestions.
No, I was just going to say, well, one, thank you for this and for the idea sharing. And I think when I'm asked that, Melissa, I think you volunteered just as an idea is like, given that like we are in, 2022 and just how people tend to pay these days and the fact that like Venmo has changed their policy, if this is something that we could try to advocate to CAPTA in terms just to make life easier for these PTAs that are trying to work with people as we host events and fundraisers. That would be great.
Yeah, thank you. I will bring that to my next district president's meeting. And then that goes to California PTA Board of Managers, and we just kind of ask questions about that. And also can ask, and anyone else is actually also welcome to advocate through the treasurer at California PTA. But I'll ask what people are doing because they did just recently post that blog. So I'll just check in with them about that. Thank you.
Yeah, and I mean, if there are great workarounds, like I'm all ears. But I think, as we've tried to problem solve together here, like there's so much friction with all the other options. So if they're like, we have a great suggestion instead of something like Venmo, then that'd be amazing. But if, everything is like 5 times harder, then it would be great if they would consider, especially given Venmo has updated their policies.
Is there, you said there's a blog that has all methods of payments kind of described?
The blog I'm talking about, the link went in the chat a couple chats ago. It was just the California PTA's blog about using Venmo. It wasn't a list of, but it may have had some suggestions in there. I'd have to reread it.
Because that would actually be something that if CAPTA could provide, these are all the ways that people are, paying for things these days. I mean, I don't know. I have to say, I went traveling, and I know it's not quite legal to not accept cash, but there were actually places that did not take cash, so you had to pay. Yeah, so I don't have like.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's a San Francisco thing, but I had heard that. And then that kind of changed in the pandemic. It's illegal to not accept cash, but right.
Yeah, because it's legal tender, right? So you have to. But in Europe, there were so many places that were like, no, we don't have a way to make change. We don't want to touch your change. I don't know.
Oh, before we sign off, I was skimming that link again, and there was one that they recommended called Cheddar Up, but again, I'm not that familiar. I'm not familiar with it, but they did provide a recommendation after saying no Venmo. Then they made one suggestion there, so recommend just kind of reading that last link that went into the chat. All right, thank you, everyone. I am so glad that we had a great attendance. I know some people were asking about the recording, and they're going to look at that. And just want you to know that we're here for you. You're not alone, and you're not the first to be confused. Even I have been. There's a lot of detail, but hopefully we broke it down for you. Come back to us with any questions.